Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Christensen. This is Horror 101 with Dr. AC, celebrating classic horror throughout history with new episodes every Friday night. Stuart Gordon's debut feature, Re-Animator, is a fast-paced, tongue-in-cheek blend of horror, sci-fi, and dark comedy that helped define the splatter subgenre of the 1980s. Loosely based on H.P. Lovecraft's serialized novella and set at the fabled Miskatonic University, the wildly intense Herbert West, deliciously played by Jeffrey Combs, embarks on a series of experiments to bring the dead back to life, with increasingly chaotic and outrageous results. Re-Animator leans fully into its mad scientist premise, delivering practical effects that are by turns grotesque, absurd, and weirdly funny. Bruce Abbott, Barbara Crampton, Robert Sampson, and David Gale round out the cast, grounding the on-screen madness with enjoyably full-blooded characterizations. Balancing horror and satire with sanguinary flair, Re-Animator is gleefully macabre and wickedly entertaining. Its over-the-top tone, energetic pacing, and fearless style earned it cult status, 2 sequels, a stage musical, and enduring adoration from genre fans of all ages. It's a manic, fluorescent green celebration of science gone wrong, and it still feels delightfully messy, manic, and totally unpredictable. A dizzying roller coaster of science gone wrong that still feels fresh, funny, and furiously unhinged 40 years later. Herbert West has a good head on his shoulders and another one on his desk. We're talking 40 years of Re-Animator, and we have an amazing panel to chat about it with me. Let's bring everybody in, and let's say hello to Mike Mayo.
Good evening, everyone. Glad to be here.
Anna Sergioli.
I've snapped all my pencils, but I've got a pen.
Sarah Binion.
Hi, I'm wearing my best West impersonation.
And Chris Wiley.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. And Dr. AC, I must say I'm very disappointed in you.
It wouldn't be the first time. And we're going to be chatting about Re-Animator from 1985, celebrating its 40th anniversary. And we're also going to be chatting about the sequels, Bride of Re-Animator from 1990 and Beyond Re-Animator from 2003. And we will be talking spoilers for all of those movies. So prepare yourselves, everybody. We're going deep. Thanks for coming on the show, everybody. And welcome. This is one that I've absolutely been looking forward to. I'm so delighted to have this panel. Sarah, thank you for coming on. It's your first time in the doc's office. Mike, Anna, Chris, thank you all for coming back. It's lovely to see you. And we're going to kick things off with our origin stories. Mike, I'm curious to hear where you came across this movie for the first time.
Well, before I talk about that, let me say that I first came across H.P. Lovecraft in the Charlotte, North Carolina library, where I found those old Arkham House editions of Lovecraft with the just, wonderfully lurid covers. And that kind of got me into it. And I read all of them. And I distinctly remember kind of after I'd gone through a lot of the short stories, discovering Herbert West Re-Animator, the serial novel, and being really struck, even at the time as a young teenager, at how racist it was. I mean, it's just, if you go back and read the original stuff, it's just beyond. You really can't stomach it at all. The movie happily has none of that in it. And I discovered the movie in the first theatrical release. And I remember the theater I went to see it in, and just being, so incredibly delighted to see something like this that at every moment shocked and surprised me and just was so funny at the same time. It was more than I could really handle then. And I don't know how many times I've watched it since and enjoyed it and seen more every time.
Thank you, Mike. Anna, how about you?
So for once, I don't remember the first time I saw this movie. I usually have a really clear memory, but this has been a movie of mine for a really long time. And this is probably my most recommended horror movie to people, where I'm like, do you want to have something that's both kind of like a Victorian Frankenstein story and kind of The Evil Dead and kind of like The Howling, if you want like the effects meet the camp, meet the like weirdly Victorian sensibility, this is the movie for you. I love Re-Animator so much. It's always been, since the first time I saw it, even though I can't remember, I know I loved it. And I thought I saw Bride of Re-Animator to prepare for today, and I thought, oh, I've seen it already, but I should recap. Oh, I did not remember that movie as much as I thought I did. There was so much more. And then I saw Beyond Re-Animator and didn't quite have the charm for me, but I still had fun with Herbert West being Herbert West.
We will dive deep into all of those. Sarah, again, thanks for coming on the show. Love to hear your origin story, how you came to Herbert West for the first time.
Thanks. Yeah, in college, we used to do like this movie night, and everyone got to pick movies. And I was like, I'm going to bring this fun movie. It's goofy. And I thought I was bringing scanners in, and I told people about it. And I said, it's this like crazy scientist, and he does these experiments. The gore is interesting and exciting. And I went and got it, and I brought it in. And I was like, this is not the movie I remember. And I kind of tried to play a straight face a little bit because I was like, I brought this. Then I realized Scanners and Re-Animator were totally different. For tonight, I also just watched Bride of Re-Animator and Beyond. I thought they were really good. I actually really liked The Bride a lot. Especially with some of the additional effects and additional characters that came in. So
you are fully steeped in Re-Animator lore now.
Yep, totally up to date.
And that is an epic mix-up. I'm so happy to hear that story.
I mean, head explosion versus head walking around.
They both heads figure prominently.
I have no idea if I gave the right description, but it was probably close enough that nobody really noticed that they were watching the wrong movie because it was a crazy scientist doing experiments.
It sounded like everybody had a good time, though.
Oh yeah, it was funnier than Scanners.
Scanners is not a laugh.
Genuinely funnier. Chris, how did you come to this one?
I like Anna. I don't recall the first time I caught this flick, but it's just been a part of my anatomy my whole life, pretty much at this point. The first film in this kind of world I saw was actually From Beyond, and then when I learned about this being from the same guy at the time, I didn't know the director. I became obsessed with finding it at the time on VHS, and then I watched it. And then, like I said, it's just been a part of my life ever since. I've dressed as Herbert West constantly, many times in my life for events. Re-Animator is one of the few films where every time it comes out in a new format, I pick it up. So I have it like in multiple different iterations. I just love it from the top down. And every time I watch it, it just reminds me of the first time I watch it. It's flawless. It's from that era of 80s and 90s horror / drama / comedies where they have a true narrative that drives, but then it's also gross and funny.
Yeah, this was released right in the heyday of the 80s where practical effects were king. I feel like that was kind of how I came to it, was like, this is the most gory, messed up movie you've ever seen. And I'm like, okay, sign me up. And it did not disappoint. And I'm a Chicago actor. And so it was really exciting to learn that it had come from the Chicago theater legend that is Stuart Gordon. One of the first places I auditioned when I came to Chicago was the Organic Theater. Stuart was long gone by then, but his legacy absolutely lived on. I've gotten to meet Stuart numerous times at conventions and things like that. When this was being turned into a musical, he and I talked because at the time I was part of a theater group called Wild Claw Theater that trafficked in horror theater. And Stuart was like, how great would it be for Wild Claw to do Re-Animator the musical? And it was just one of those things where we didn't quite have the budget to do it right. But it was a lovely lunch that Stuart and I had. And he gave me the recording of the musical's staged reading, which we'll talk about later. But it was a lovely time, lovely guy, and a great, great movie. And I'm thrilled that it's celebrating its 40th anniversary. There have been screenings all over the country, all over the world, honoring the 40th anniversary. And Ignite Films has just released a 4K UHD release that is just stuffed to the gills. And we will absolutely be rattling off all the awesome supplements that are on that release.
Could you give me a little background about Stuart Gordon? Because I know he has the theater background, but I don't know exactly what he did.
Well, he was the artistic director of Organic Theater in Chicago. And it was very much when, Chicago was a scrappy theater town. Steppenwolf was in its early stages, Wisdom Bridge, things like that. But he was kind of a bad boy of theater anyway. I think the college that he went to school at, he staged a naked production of Peter Pan. And that just kind of like tells you the risks that he was ready to take. Chicago was absolutely the right place for him. And he was the artistic director at Organic for a long time. And it wasn't until he kind of came out to LA to pursue a career as a film director that he left it behind. But Re-Animator started off as a stage play. With Lovecraft, it has not been successfully adapted to the screen very often. I think it is kind of tough to capture that kind of cosmic horror.
Well, and I think this pretty much jettisons a lot of the Lovecraft stuff. It just, we've got the syringe full of the goop that is going to be in, we don't go into any of the science stuff at all. In the opening scene with the exploding eyeballs, which I got to admit, that's just a great effect. Once you start there, you've set a high bar. The film adaptation really has nothing to do with all of the Cthulhu stuff, the old ones, things that were so important in the rest of Lovecraft. They're just going with the reanimating the Frankenstein story, bringing the dead back to life in a very bad way. And if you look at it at all logically, every time you inject this fluorescent goop into somebody, it's bad. And so why would anyone ever do it again? I think that is what is the reason this is so successful, is because it sticks with that. It ignores all the other stuff that is in the Herbert West Re-Animator serial that would just make it completely unpalatable to any kind of audience today.
And to continue with that too, I think Stuart Gordon understood from being involved with the stage, like what parts of the film medium work best when applied to these stories. Exactly. And when you get too accurate, because I'm also a lifelong Lovecraft fan, when you get too accurate with the work, it becomes unwatchable, honestly. Mm-hmm. And he kind of tiptoed into that a little bit with some of his other work, but like just getting the core elements and then letting yourself fill in the gaps with, those things that constitute what you love about acting. Because I mean, the movie's funny, but it also has a great story, and it's funny because it's campy, not for any other reason. Like the performances really are campy, not even the setup. So I think he just totally understood how to translate this. And I think that's also why no one else really has until the last few years.
So what I thought was so interesting, I was reading the Roger Ebert review, and he talked about his familiarity with Stuart Gordon as a stage producer. And there were some particular shows he was familiar with where he said, those of you who saw his stagings in Chicago aren't surprised by the gore you're seeing in these movies. And I think one of the great balancing things here was Brian Yuzna, because kind of the theme he has when you see him in interviews talking about all three of these movies is that at a certain point he went, who cares? So when it came to certain like over explanations about things, which in a book would make sense because you're reading, narration, Brian Yuzna went, who cares? Why do I need that motivation or that explanation? Let's just have a film and who cares? And I think they balanced each other out really well in this one.
That's especially true in the sequel too. Why explain? Just keep driving.
Yeah.
I think you're right in that, yes, it is realizing that it's working for another medium. It really is about how do we get those showcase moments on screen? You point out the opening sequence, Mike. I mean, that is where we get to see what kind of film we're in for. Yep. It's over the top, it's cartoonish, but our characters are grounded in that reality, even as they're heightened. And I think one of the other things that really plays well is that we have effects, and they're all practical effects, obviously, in the 80s. But we also have kind of some stagecraft in that we have Dr. Hill kind of carrying his own disembodied head. And it doesn't take a brain surgeon, to figure out how they're achieving that effect. But we really love it. We love the theatricality of it. And I think that's one of the things that Stuart realized, that when an audience is watching something, they like seeing the trick. They also like understanding how the trick is done. And then you also show them a trick that they don't know how it's done. Like when you have, a reanimated corpse or you have eyeballs exploding, they don't necessarily know how that's done, but you give them that little piece that's accessible and they are absolutely keyed in.
The term grand guignol goes back to theater. I mean,
Yep.
that's where it began. And this is pure Grand Guignol all the way through. And that's why it's so much fun, because it takes itself seriously, but not too seriously.
And if you're committed to the bit, the audience will go with you. And
Yeah.
they are whole ass committed to what they're doing with this picture. There's not a moment you think they doubted themselves on anything. And then that's why I think it reads so real and fun. You know, we're with it. I don't care if it sometimes looks cheap. It's like I'm fully on board.
With some of the like cheapness, like when I was looking at David Gale character, was like, what? Does he not have any hair at this point in time in his life? Like, why is his hair looking so goofy? Apparently, he shaved his head for the film because that would give the most continuity for all the moments that he is separated from his body. And one of the things, though, that was something I noticed, but was the body never got any of the goop, but it still continued to move around. So I enjoyed his character, but it was one of those things where I was like, I think that his body and his dynamic with the mannequin and the moving around parts and the hair
might have something to do with how he's weirdly psychic, or not psychic, telekinetic, maybe.
Yeah,
Or
his hypnosis.
who cares? Like,
He's the most sentient of all of the reanimated characters, too.
On that note, Sarah, I mean, like, how does his disembodied head hear him? You know,
Herbert West starts out in Europe, where we have the exploding eyeballs. And then he comes over to America, to Miskatonic University and the hospital there, where he continues his experiments with bringing various things back to life. And he winds up rooming with another young doctor there who has an attractive girlfriend who just happens to be the dean's daughter. And Dr. Gale is kind of the head surgeon there, who does not appreciate Herbert West's genius. And this causes considerable friction between them early on. And then we have to work all of that out, I guess, is kind of the basic setup.
that's good. I'm just going to make a quick correction that it's David Gale playing Dr. Carl Hill.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I didn't want anybody showing up in the comments going, "Hey, what the hell?" But yes, David Gale, I think, he's a wonderful foil to Jeffrey Combs as Herbert West. Herbert West is kind of a Frankenstein character, and he is driven and pretty amoral about the whole thing. And then you have the heart of the story, which is Dr. Dan Kane and his girlfriend Meg, who are these young lovers who are caught up in this wild maelstrom of resurrected corpses. But it's done, and I think this is where, Stuart Gordon comes in, is that it's done in such a lovely pitched way that the comedy comes through, the horror comes through, the ghastliness comes through, but it's all done in this real spirit of fun. And it's done in like 87 minutes. That's the other thing.
Yes.
I really have to the fact that because I think the original cut was like 2.5 hours long. Trim, got down this lean, mean 87-minute thing that was unrated at the time as well. That was another kind of thing, because this is the time when George Romero is releasing things like Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, unrated, and getting great responses from the crowd. The fans are really turning up for these big gore fests. And so this one went out unrated. And then they ended up doing an R-rated version, I think, as well, where
and a TV version.
Yep, and I'm like, what does that look like?
Wow.
Trash.
It's
mostly blurred, actually. It's not like they cut, which is kind of worse.
I love Herbert's introduction to so many different characters. So his intro to the audience is just, "Oh my God, your mentor is dead," and he's like, "Well, of course he's dead. The dosage was wrong." His intro to Dr. Hill is, "Hi, you plagiarized my mentor's work." Then his intro with Dan and Meg is, with Dan, he's calling him Dan and being all casual. And the first question he has isn't about his bedroom. It's, "Where's the basement?" And then she's always Miss Halsey, because Herbert just can't stand a woman.
Right. Neither could Lovecraft in a lot of cases, but
I think within that 87 minutes, to speak to Herbert West, Dan was really identifiable, because Herbert just came off as the nightmare roommate that you have tons of stories about, and like it just blips into like the refrigerator scene and where is the basement and his relationship with the teachers. Yeah.
And you see his persona fall apart really fast too. Like in the opening scene, he's chaotic. Then we meet him in the the medical operating room or whatever, and he's very composed and direct. Same with when he first meets Dan, but that's pretty much the only time he's like that. He's a kinetic energy ball of just anarchy that he tries to stay put together because he's so intelligent. But that mad scientist, like, part of him is it's the lion's share of who he is. And once it starts going rampant, that's the only thing we ever see after like 15 minutes into the movie, which is kind of awesome too.
Jeffrey Combs is our actor playing Herbert West, and it's one of these kind of like instantly iconic performances.
Yeah.
Where for better or for worse, Jeffrey Combs becomes a horror icon, and much of the rest of his career is seen in the horror genre. And what his reports is that he'd never read any Lovecraft. He wasn't really a horror fan. It was just a job he was looking to do to keep working. And he didn't think anybody would ever see this movie. It was just something he was hoping to, kind of get another credit and keep growing his resume. And then it became this massive thing that he is really well known for. And he's very gracious at conventions and things like that. But he's also very honest about the fact that this was not his plan as an actor.
And it created a lifelong relationship with Stuart Gordon, who directed him and stuff until he died. I mean, that's like a partnership that Bruce Campbell, Sam Raimi, like these people who just trust each other.
Yep. And
then just have lifelong careers of just all over the place work. I mean, everything from this stuff to even like playing Edgar Allan Poe together. It's like wild.
That's right. He did that one-man Edgar Allan Poe production called Nevermore. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Jeffrey Combs' performance. What makes it so special, and why has it endured over 3 films and more?
Let me go to my favorite scene. 2 men wrestling a cat puppet. With the swinging light borrowed, not coincidentally from Psycho. That scene, I love it every time I see it, and I loved it even more the last time. It was just so wonderful. And it's not the kind of thing that would normally be the first thing you would see on an actor's resume, but boy, did they nail that scene. Scary, funny, crazy. I loved it.
2 or 3 rounds, right? Because they keep re-injecting.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding. I don't think it's an accident that we're talking about. Jeffrey Combs was doing stage productions. He was a stage actor before he came to this, which I think explains a lot of his relationship with Stuart Gordon working so well. And he's definitely doing B-movie schlock. I mean, in Bride, he goes full Dr. Pretorius from Bride of Frankenstein, which is, I can't wait to talk about more about that. But it's B-movie camp, but it's so sincere. And also, I feel like Herbert West he reminds me of like a drag queen, the way that he can just say these snappy, quick, snippy lines. And he's also so clearly manipulative. It's so clear how he's manipulating Dan. It's actually in Bride that he kind of reveals the most, where Dan says, "I'm a doctor," and Herbert says, "Well, be a scientist."
That's right.
One scene that really stuck out to me, Herbert West, he's this intense scientist, right? But there's like a 2 fingers reaching out, and it reminded me of the Michelangelo Sistine Chapel, when God or the creator and the first human touch. And so I feel like it's that hubris of Herbert West that is illustrated in there. And it's one of those foreshadowing like things that like kicks off the franchise, right?
The more I'm thinking about trying to remember my favorite moments, it's making me just realize how much Herbert West's chaos drags the other characters into chaos. Because you think about Dr. Hill, who's like so self-serious and obsessed, like what that character becomes in its mania. I personally really like Dean Halsey when he's like a semi-sentient zombie thing that they're kind of able to like point around with love kind of guiding him. He like recognizes certain things. It's like kind of like Bub in Day of the Dead, but he's still like got this like these manic eyes. It's fantastic. Just everywhere he goes, he eventually drags you to his level. I think that's pretty great. Except for Dan. Dan does kind of, he's kind of along for the ride, but he doesn't go completely like chaotic. But everyone else, it's pretty awesome to watch that happen, I think, at different rates over the course of the picture.
Well, and I think Meg also kind of retains her innocence.
Mm-hmm.
She's dragged into it, and boy, does she get in trouble.
Yeah.
That was one of those moments, and I'm curious to hear everybody's thoughts, because that's the scene, that everybody thinks about and I think remembers, is after Carl Hill is beheaded by Herbert West. His decapitated body comes and grabs and conks Herbert West out, and then makes off with his serum and goes about resurrecting himself. He gets Dean Halsey to go grab Meg and bring her to him so that he can mess around with her, because if you're going to be a disembodied head, you might as well have a little fun. And that was the first time I'd seen what was referred to as a visual pun. I was like, that's what you mean by that.
But before we talk about that, I have to talk about my two favorite pieces of foreshadowing getting there. Three favorite. There's the Talking Heads poster.
Yep.
Very prominently featured in the bedroom of Dan and Meg. When Meg is in Dr. Hill's office, he has that head on the desk facing directly at her. My personal favorite scene is Herbert breaking those pencils. And then when Herbert's trying to wake up Dr. Hill, he's hitting him on the head with a pencil.
I think that's the kind of comic sensibility and the storytelling that Stuart Gordon, and I have to say his co-writers, Dennis Paoli and William Norris, both of whom were Chicago folks, they collaborated on the screenplay together. They had something that was much more serious, and then they kind of started dispensing with the seriousness and adding the silliness that they knew would appeal to an audience. People's thoughts on the infamous giving head scene.
I remember Barbara Crampton saying on one of the accompanying tracks that, it's her mom's favorite scene.
Could you get more male gaze than that scene? Also, like on every level, it's just like literally physically on set, but also just in general, like the way it's done is like, it's so schlocky and exploitative of her as an actress and of the character. But I guess that's what you're going for. He's despicable and gross, right? And I think the like evil, like older mentor character having a crush on the like girlfriend happens a couple of times in this franchise. So I don't know, maybe there's some comment about nasty mentors and science. I don't know, but it's definitely still shocking and unsettling, and probably more so as we become more aware.
Yeah.
As we move forward.
It definitely is climactic of the ick, because there's always the relationship where Dr. Hill keeps making these comments of like the daddy to the young pretty daughter of his boss, and you're just kind of like ick, creepy old guy. And then when you see that scene, you're just like, somebody please kill him. I was gonna say it does go full circle. In the third one, there is another head decapitation scene as well.
I mean, this is the scene everyone remembers. Even the movie American Beauty, there's a conversation about this scene in that movie. But what's so interesting is it's horrible, but it's funny. It's a pun, and there is something that is humorous about it, especially like I was saying, all the foreshadowing leading up to it. And this scene is like an example of exactly the boundaries they were trying to push in this movie. Because every 80s movie was all about hyper gore and hyper sex and full frontal and things. And this one kind of took it and made it a joke. Barbara Crampton said she felt very comfortable on set when doing this scene too. So we're not here to talk about a terrible, but behind the scenes it was so awful. She was she had a fine time filming the scene. And then of course, before it goes that hair too far, Herbert West busts in and immediately he's not even helping her. He's just, you have this amazing serum and you're running after a bubble-headed co-ed, which she is not. She's a student in med school.
Yeah, she's a doctor. Yeah.
But he doesn't care. She's just ruining all of his plans with Dan.
And also, I think her acting does kind of showcase that she's leveling it up with us, because she screams, pauses, something happens, screams again. It's like, so you kind of feel it leveling up as well as you watch the scene play out. And you can tell, she was on board.
And the story that Barbara Crampton tells is that she got the gig because the actress who was originally hired, her mother read the script and said, "Nope, you're not doing that." And so that's how Barbara ended up with the gig. And I've talked to Barbara on numerous occasions, and such a wonderful actor, but also just a great person and a great horror fan. Like, she has become such an ambassador for horror. She has a column with Fangoria. She's so great at conventions, and she's really started to have a second renaissance of her career in horror films. You've seen her in quite a few things over the past 10 years. So, but I remember, she makes a great impression in this movie, and I think it's been great watching her career just as she's gone along for the past 40 years. This was very early in everybody's career. This was Stuart Gordon's film debut. Bruce Abbott and Jeffrey Combs and Barbara Crampton, they were all very young actors who were just looking to make their way in the world. And you were joined by veterans like David Gale and Robert Sampson as Dean Halsey, who were able to kind of lend that gravitas. And going back to your comment about the cat scene, Mike, that would not work if they were winking at the camera. It's the fact that they are so completely grounded in the situation. And they are, in fact, we know it's two actors wrestling a stuffed animal, and yet we buy into it because they buy into it.
And I remember, again, mentioned, when I saw it for the first time in a theater, and as you said, this was one of the ones that arrived unrated. And so I knew there was going to be something different in it. But when we got to the famous head scene, I was sitting there in the theater thinking, no, they can't do this. And, it surprised me. This was something I had never seen in a movie before. And I'm talking about all kinds of movies. But boy, whoa.
So much of this movie is truly indescribable. Like, you can picture it vividly in your mind, but you cannot explain it to somebody else.
In a hunt to describe it, I mentioned the Roger Ebert review, and something he said is that there's like a pleasure for a type of film that chooses a disreputable genre and then tries with all its might to transcend, to go over the top in some kind of artistic vision, however weird. Stuart Gordon's Re-Animator is a pleasure like that, a frankly gory horror movie that finds a rhythm and a style that make it work in a cockeyed, offbeat sort of way.
It has a full-on story with character growth and development, and then it just has campy performances, and that's what makes it, and ridiculous gore, but it's still committed to being a good story. Like, the second one's more of a collection of things happening. It's not as direct as this one, but this one's just a home run.
Well, and the fact that they'd struck a distribution deal with Charles Band and Empire Pictures, that absolutely helped things, because they could do all the post-production they needed to do and make sure that it was the best film it could be. This was absolutely one of the landmark pictures for Empire Pictures. It was a pretty successful film in its theatrical release, but it really made its name known on home video. Yeah. And that's where Empire Pictures, Charles Band, that's where they made their name, was either films that had a theatrical release or the direct-to-video market.
Think of that poster on a VHS cover of him holding the needle and the head on the thing. That just grabs you.
Then there's also the hand-drawn one where
I like the hand-drawn one.
Yeah.
I think I've seen a neon green jewel case, which that's one of those things where you're just in terms of being sitting on a shelf in a video store, that's just so eye-catching.
Well, hello, the color scheme of this show right now. You know, this is a reagent-flavored podcast. A couple of fun facts is that our composer's Richard Band, who was the brother of Charles Band. Anyone who's listened to the opening music might think, wait a minute, this seems kind of familiar.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very much inspired by Bernard Herrmann's theme from Psycho.
Inspired by?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, how is there no credit for Bernard Herrmann? And Richard Band, in one of the interviews that's on that Ignite Films release, he talks about how it's so absolutely Psycho. Who would anybody think I was fooling if I were pretending like I just made this up? And he was doing it as an homage, but also kind of just letting people know this is the kind of movie we're watching.
Mm-hmm.
And something I was just thinking about, Mike mentioned before, they keep stabbing over and over, injecting new things. Why would you do that if you're, and Anna had mentioned the whole, like, who cares, describe it. I do love that he does keep trying. We don't spend literally a second watching him develop new versions of the reagent, ever. He's just like, stab the next thing, stab the next thing. It's a new version, stab the next thing, just to keep it driving. And I think that also leads to, that score is also manic as well. Like, everything about this is it's not even 0 to 60. It starts at 60 with the opening scene, takes a little dip, and then it just shoots off from there. And yeah, this, which is almost the opposite of Psycho. I don't know, the soundtrack, everything just works together so well here. I'm surprised that everyone in this didn't start and have like a theater group together, because it's so interdependent.
You know, they say there are certain songs you can play that can get a certain person out on the dance floor. For me, it's the Re-Animator theme song. It's not just the music. I mean, the intro sequence with the anatomical drawings reminds me a lot of the Saul Bass style of movie intros. I love it. It's just fun.
The references are there, and I think it's meant in an inviting way. It's like, come on in. We know what we're doing. We know we're homaging things like Frankenstein, like Psycho, and we hope you, as a horror fan, are going to enjoy this as well.
Break a bunch of new ground, you know, maybe ease people in and be like, all right, we're going to do some stuff, you know, but whoa, is that an oboe? What?
Right. Well, speaking of new ground, Robert Burns, who was on the groundbreaking Texas Chainsaw Massacre, he did the art direction for that. He also was our art director here. And the decision to bring it up to modern times and give us a laboratory that is so basic. It's not ornate like a Frankenstein laboratory. It's just, it's like your basement, or it's like, you know, just kind of bare bones morgue, specifically giving us less ornate backgrounds and very just kind of straight ahead, so that what takes our eye is the action that's happening on screen.
Of which there is so much. This is an extremely physical movie, and I can't believe people weren't like seriously injured, like throwing things around and being punched by stuff. Especially that last scene when things go really haywire. Well, not the last scene, I guess, in the movie, but the last scene in the morgue. There is so much movement. I cannot believe it. But stage, you know.
Well, that's Peter Kent, who's Arnold Schwarzenegger's stunt double, who plays our animated corpse, who knocks down the door and crushes Dean Halsey beneath it. We also have a lot of help from Mac Ahlberg as our cinematographer. As I mentioned, this was Stuart Gordon's first film, so he didn't know a lot about camera placement. And Mac Ahlberg is kind of an all-star with Charles Band and Empire Pictures. If you look up his filmography, it's like he did that and that and that and that and that. He's just kind of a legend in B-movie circles.
And that's critical, because the amount of stuff you'd have to not get on camera with all these practical effects, puppet hands and arms and like random strings and stuff, and he still managed it. Admittedly, the cat chaos scene is probably the like cheesiest, but like, and so I don't even know how he had a camera in there in the first place. You know, overall, yeah, he had to be so aware. That is so professional of a job done on that.
That's something I do want to talk about. Is on the one hand, you've got like cat puppet. On the other hand, actual Cook County morgue photos were used for the character design. And when you see the morgue, any morgue zombie that becomes reanimated, there's a clear story of how that person died in the makeup artistry. And that combination of intense morgue art and then cat puppet, I was trying to find an analogy to this. I once had a mozzarella stick with caviar on top, and it was amazing. Like, I was like, this is so cheesy and lowbrow.
Literally.
With the beautiful caviar on top, and somehow that just elevated the whole thing so much more, and that's what this is.
I think, was it this picture that they said they wanted the most anatomically accurate gore? Was that for this one?
That sounds right.
And also, I know that like the production said that one of their primary vendors was like a local butcher, because they were using like actual guts and brain for sure in the picture. So
sure looks like it.
Well, and we also had John Carl Beekler is our makeup guy, along with John Nolan. And this was, I think at the time, it was one of the most gory films that had ever been made. Like they used like 24 gallons of fake blood. So it was a splatter, fantastic kind of movie. There's a look to this film that keeps it in that kind of heightened feel so that you don't get grossed out by it in a nauseated way. You get grossed out by it in a fun, shock, haunted house way. It's a Halloween party where somebody throws, the grapes at you and you're like, oh, it's eyeballs.
Do you think that when they were going into the morgue stuff, for me, when I was watching it, it didn't feel like super zombie-esque? Because like in my head, I always think zombie, they're going for brains. That's their motivation. I couldn't tell what exactly was the motivation. I only know Herbert West was just to bring back all of the characters as some character, but I noticed that I didn't really care as they were killed off, or there was no consistent way to kill them off. They seemed like gentle zombies, kind of. So, because some of them were just really scared, and then we had Carl Hill being the one who wants to manipulate in his like psychic powers. So I was wondering, is it more of a Frankenstein or is it more of a zombie, or do we not care about the distinction?
They're reanimated dead, right? So, but it does feel like they're just very primal. So they can be pointed at a thing and they will go to that thing. Otherwise, they react with pure fear, pure anger, rage, that kind of stuff. Except for Dr. Hill, for whatever reason, it maintains maybe his insane mental prowess is retained.
I've never done parts.
Yeah, and also the length of time, how much of the brain dies, right? That's like the whole like fight they have at the beginning of the film, right? So I think that's part of it as well. And that we've never had a more fresh specimen. Technically, the cat responded the same way, right?
That's right.
It's just like got energy going to muscles, and it just moves around. Every self-respecting horror fan should catch this. I don't think there's anyone who likes it. You either love it or it's not for you. And for most people, you probably will love it.
87 minutes. That's most of the reason I think this movie is so good. It does not overplay its hand, doesn't overstay its welcome. It knows what it wants to do, does it quickly, and is all the more effective because of that.
Also, I just want to throw out a shout out to Jeffrey Combs' amazing shoelace tying. When he hops off the gurney in a single take, he puts on his socks, ties both of his shoes, and gets to his mark on time. I was like, that's a stage actor right there.
3 days of practice.
Is that right?
No, I don't know.
I want that to be true.
I love the art direction of the very last scene in terms of like the graphics.
Yeah.
I felt like fading to black with the green.
Just slowly.
Yeah, I was like, that is a great close because we all knew what was happening and chaos continuing to ensue.
There's nothing I don't love about this movie. I love the score. I love the opening sequence, both in terms of the cold open and the credits.
Yeah.
I love all the acting choices. I love the writing choices. I love every visual decision. I don't think there's any misses in this movie, which is why I always recommend it, because there's no reason I shouldn't. And even people who are like, oh, but does the cat die? I'm like, oh, it's not even a cat by the time it's hurt. It's a puppet. You're fine. It's a perfect movie.
And 5 years later, we get a sequel, Bride of Re-Animator. And that one is directed by our producer, Brian Yuzna, who we haven't talked a ton about, but he definitely is somebody who made his presence known in the 80s and 90s as a director and a producer. Yeah, we've kind of hinted around, but I'd like to just go around and find out what people's feelings are about Bride of Re-Animator. How does it land for you? Chris, let's go ahead and kick things off with you.
It's definitely wilder. It's more crazy. I kind of mentioned before that it doesn't have as much story. It's more a collection of crazy scenes to me, personally, I guess. But overall, I like that they changed things enough to where you have a different setting. It's like all gothic and everything, and it starts out in war. I thought it was an interesting choice to start it, really the whole franchise, right at the end of the last picture. This one, I think, is definitely a great follow-up and a flawless midnight movie. It's for a more specific type of fan. On the other hand, It's way crazier, and Bat Dr. Hill is crazy as well. I love that. It does feature, I think, the best aspects of the first film, which is everyone is fully committed to what we're doing here. We don't care that it's insane. It's got even less consideration for the how of why things are happening. It's more chaotic, which works and doesn't work to me a little bit, I guess. But overall, still fun. Makes the rotation once in a while, not as much as the original, but definitely an awesome flick and a once in a lifetime experience. And being directed by Mr. Yuzna also definitely shows itself here. I don't want to get into a spoiler too early, but all the stuff with the bride is wild. Not even like the story it beats, like what you see, how it comes to fruition, and how it all ultimately comes to a head and ends. It's gross.
And anybody who's familiar with Brian Yuzna's society, they're already familiar with Brian Yuzna's. He's not afraid to go there because he'll go there and then some.
The throwbacks to the Gothic, like Universal stuff, very much appeals to me, and I'm sure to a lot of people. It's awesome.
Sarah, thanks for doing the extra homework. What was your feeling? You said you liked this one.
I really liked this one. I feel like sometimes when you see sequels, there's always that moment where it's like, do you remember when we made that first successful joke in the first movie? Here it is, just slightly different because we want your laugh again. But this is, I think the thing that seemed to tie in was they were just like, okay, we've continued to spend years in South America continuing to evolve our thing, so we're going to do more experiments. So I feel like they introduced new concepts of like dissections, more different animals, not just continuing to rely on the cat. Dan's grief has evolved and how his interaction with different women. I liked it as an evolution from the first one and not just a remember the jokes we made in the first one. I really enjoyed it, and I definitely loved the bat. And I think that was the first time I also realized that they were in Arkham, and I was like, is that a Batman tie?
But it's the other way around.
Right? Yeah, it's the other way around.
Oh my God, this movie is so fun. It's so goofy. I don't really think they're trying to do anything except just have a weird, fun time. I mean, they're like, puppets? Let's get more puppets. Let's get weirder puppets. I mean, the bride is just so iconic, but really they're just doing, I mean, it's just, we made a Frankenstein movie. Let's do a Bride of Frankenstein movie, but in our Re-Animator style. And it's just pure fun, and it's so goofy. And if we talked about camp in the first one, this is capital C camp. It's just a fun movie. And I think, would I recommend this to everyone the same way I do Re-Animator? No, but if I'm recommending this movie to you, you're cool.
Mike, how about you?
I really should probably not say anything because I despise this movie. I think it really sucks. All the stuff that is really good in the first one just is not good here. To be fair, I also really dislike Bride of Frankenstein too. So, I
got hot take.
Wow.
I absolutely love the original Frankenstein more than Bride of Frankenstein.
Yep.
I think Bride of Frankenstein is a different animal, and I don't think this one is as much of a different animal as, say, Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, but it definitely feels like I love that term evolution, Sarah. Like that's what it feels like. It feels like it's being something further. And I think Brian Yuzna at the director's helm is kind of what it's about. I don't feel like it is as grounded. I feel like it is kind of going sillier and kind of sillier for silly's sake. It's my least favorite of the three films, but I still enjoyed it. The special effects are what are taking the lead here. And we have names like Screaming Mad George. We have names like K&B that are just going to become superstars if they aren't superstars already. I had a good time with it. I do feel like it is, a step down from the original, but it would be hard to be. I mean, that's also my favorite Stuart Gordon movie. Is his first one.
I think a primary difference too, and you guys, I'm curious on all your feedback on this, is that the first film, I've said it multiple times, like it's kind of a serious story, but then the performances are campy. But in this one, there's like jokes more in the script.
Yeah,
it's trying to be like a funny movie and also crazy, and I think that's kind of a key distinction on what we have happening here, and that might be why it reads so differently to. We're kind of split, it seems. Maybe some don't take as well to that because it's too much of a good thing, right?
Yeah, I think the original really rides the line of comedy horror. And this one feels much like a comedy that is also using horror trappings.
It's slapstick too, which more so than the first one.
And I mean, it starts with Dr. Hill's head, where we're like, didn't your head famously get thrown into a wall with like a literal meatball effect? But
Who cares? Just keep going.
And Brian Yuzna is like, who cares? So the actor wanted back in the movie, and they're like, we like you, sure. And so we start with his head back here, and that's when you know, like, okay, maybe it's canon, maybe it's not.
That's when you learn that the pieces can merge back together. Maybe because he was so intelligent, he formed back together. Like, one of the weird things when I felt like they first introduced that concept of everything was when Herbert West built the thing with the eyeball, and the fifth finger was a tail, maybe, or a brain. I don't know. But it walked around a little bit, and I was like, oh, okay. And so for me, that kind of gave explanation to why the bride was able to be formed and why the head came back. So I felt like it was closing the loop.
And why Herbert West came back too, kind of. He didn't really look like he made it out of that. Like, I can't tell in this picture if Dan is ride or die or not, or is he just being dragged along with Herbert. That's the other kind of thing. But I think the only like part I personally don't dig is I never really liked the psychic stuff, the telekinetic stuff, and that becomes like a key part of like a specific section of this flick. For some reason, that just doesn't work for me. All the other craziness is fine, but having a telekinetic zombie head, one step too far. I don't know.
Well, and it becomes ambulatory, like once it gets the bat wings sewn onto it, which also, like, that effect of them slicing off the bat, like that, I think is the most disturbing image in this movie, is slicing off that poor bat's wings, because it's like making its little, man, no, God, help. We haven't really talked much about Bruce Abbott as Dan, and I think the change from Dan in the original to this one, the first version of Dan in the original Re-Animator, I feel like is much more grounded. He's kind of being dragged along, like you said, Chris. Here, we're not quite sure why he's here. Like, why does he have the alliance with Herbert West anymore after what happened? And I don't think that's ever, for me, sufficiently explained to justify why he would continue to hang around with this madman.
On the other hand, Miskatonic University, like, you, on the one hand, you want to say, well, he's kind of lost everything. He was part of this like slaughterhouse that happened at his college. On the other hand, the college doesn't like research the people they hire to come work for them because they're back there again. Right, so it's like he technically could have just gotten another job, I guess. But as we've said a million times, who cares? Just
exactly. We're just going to go for bread.
I thought it was guilt, like, because that's why the bride has Meg's heart.
Right.
True.
So I felt like in the first one, he's got the crazy ring, and then he starts getting into the chaos, and then there's the guilt with Meg at the end of the scene, and then in this one, the guilt continues, and I think it's just continuing to go the evolution of madness, and that's why it is slapstick, is because it's just throwing everything in there, and it's continuing to whirlwind until the end.
Can you remind me, because I haven't seen it in a little while, doesn't Herbert West use the heart to try and lure Dan to get on board, or am I misremembering?
Oh yeah, he goes hunting. Our first introduction of Dan in the first movie is him trying to resuscitate a patient and he can't, and kind of showing like he's trying and he can't resuscitate the patients. We get this idea of him being into Herbert's thing because that's his greatest failing as a doctor, is he can't save them all. So that's movie one. Movie two, he's in Peru in a civil war with Herbert. Big leap to get there. And then throughout the movie, there's like a nurse who says about Dan, he cares the most. Like, he's the doctor who just cares the most. How he ended up becoming a doctor is beyond me after the events of the last one. But yeah, when Herbert hunts that all the body parts are preserved in not even a cooler, just a closet.
Yep. Just a file, just a cabinet,
Grabs Meg's heart and then
science.
yeah.
So is all this chaos what you enjoyed about it, Mike, or did not enjoy about it, or what was the thing? What is the thing that you didn't enjoy?
Just that it so thoroughly jettisoned, the characters that were dead in the first movie all of a sudden are back to life, and just it was just way too silly for me. It didn't do any of the things that I loved about the first one. I'm slightly warmer towards the third one, but still feel like it is plowing ground that's already been tilled.
Yeah, no, I would say that's fair. Is that although anybody who's a Universal monster fan has to make peace with the fact that we're just gonna bring this monster back. Yep. It doesn't matter whether we set that thing on fire. We're gonna make it exactly.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna bring this monster back because damn it, the audiences want them back. But I agree, Mike. I feel this one feels a little like we're bringing things back for the sake of fan service, as opposed to anything that feels justified or that's helpful to a narrative.
And I guess this has kind of been underneath everything we were saying about the first one. It is so fiercely original. I, felt like I had really not ever seen anything exactly like that in a horror movie before. And it was just so wonderful. And I felt that again looking at it this time.
I'll admit the first time I saw Bride of Re-Animator, I was not on board. I thought the beginning looked kind of cheap the way it was shot and stuff like that. But I think as my taste changed, it reminds me very, very similarly to when I saw Basket Case. I was like, there's no way there's 3 of these. What could they possibly do in a sequel? And the second one, it's just like 1,000% the first one. More everything, more weird monster. This is that. It's like, how could they make a sequel to Re-Animator? It's got so much going on. Oh, we'll just put 1,000,000 times as many weird monsters, feet that are alive, bat flying head. And so I think now, my taste changed, and I absolutely, now that I'm thinking about it more, I'm changing my opinion. You guys hitting on it is making me like, I'm going to watch it after.
I'm just going to defend it harder.
Oh, I forgot about that room until you just mentioned it. There's the room of misfit experiments that breaks through at the end. That is so great.
It's like a foot attached to a hand. Who cares? It's alive.
Well, that's the Dr. Pretorius bit I was talking about. So Dr. Pretorius, the character in Bride of Frankenstein, with his little people in the jars and stuff, where there was and then here we've got Herbert West with his little creatures that he at one point in the film calls "you rejects," which was not very nice. As soon as the dog's leg gets torn off, he's just grabbing the leg and putting it on an experience. He can't be stopped. He's a scientist, not a doctor.
Well, and I think our characters, both to the film's benefit and detriment, are a little thinner this time around. We 100%. Have, our Detective Chapman, played by Claude Earl Jones, not to be confused with James Earl Jones. He's set up to be kind of the heavy of the movie, but he's kind of a one-note heavy throughout until he gets resuscitated with a dog arm. And then, we see a little bit more life to him, such as it is. But there's that whole, kind of backstory of him maybe having murdered his wife.
Oh, yeah.
And her coming back, and he's like, it's all about vengeance for him. I'm like, well, if you murdered your wife, why are you so resentful of the guy who killed her? There's a lot of stuff in there that doesn't quite jibe.
But Dr. Graves is the metalist name ever. We have to agree on that.
Gotta agree, 100%.
I thought he was investigating because his wife got brought back. Because she didn't fully die. And so I thought he wanted to just hide it because he was a police officer, wanted to hide that he was a wife beater.
Except for he points her out to people. So I'm kind of like, you're doing a really crap job of hiding her. Showing an investigative reporter this? Is that what you're doing? Okay, good. Just checking. Is Francesca a reporter in this one?
Yeah, she's something like a journalist.
Because in Beyond Re-Animator, she's a journalist as well. So I wasn't sure if I was conflating the two.
I thought in the third one she was the journalist, but in the second one I thought she was Dan's love interest.
Yeah.
But I thought she was also a doctor because they met her in
Peru. But was she a journalist in Peru? I think she was. But maybe she's both. Maybe she's a journalist
and a freedom fighter. She's everything. She's every woman in the world to me.
Yeah, why Dan likes her until he doesn't. Yes.
The house. Just the set piece of just this haunted mansion next to a cemetery with a broken wall into the cemetery. Wow,
Yeah.
I love that. It was just so over the top that I liked it.
There's something to, because even the score changed a little bit too, right? Like the theme. There's something to wearing your inspiration just on your chest, like that being like with the Frankenstein imagery and like the windmill, right? It's like they don't care. Yes, they're gonna smash your face in the reference, and then they're gonna do their own thing with it.
And speaking of chest, we have to mention Kathleen Kinmont
Oh.
as our bride. She is wonderful and does actually deliver a terrific performance, even as she is presented as this grotesque collection of body parts at the end. I think she manages to be genuinely human and absolutely referencing back to Bride of Frankenstein, Elsa Lanchester's, being horrified at the monster. And in this case, the monster's Herbert West.
And not to speak ill of someone who's not here, but I know there's conflicting reports on why Barbara Crampton did not come back for this one. She's such a perfect fit, both as a personality and looking at the course of her career.
Yeah.
I think it would have been fantastic to have her in here for 1 second,
Yep.
or if it was a core character. I don't know if it ever got to fruition what they wanted, but I do miss her in this, because she's just such an element on her own.
Yeah, she's the heart of the original film for sure.
I do think we should talk about the bride creation, though. I mean, it's so over the top that I had to roll my eyes. Literally, the legs of a sex worker and the womb of a virgin. Like, they could not be any more stereotypical male fantasy. But the thing that the hands of a lawyer, which I thought was great. Case dismissed.
The womb of a virgin will pull bile into your throat. That's like, oh God.
Somebody wrote that down and said, that's good. Let's keep that in.
Yeah.
And
the legs that have wrapped around countless men or whatever the hell they say. It's like, oh God.
It reminded me of Frankenhooker. I didn't understand why we had to put all these different body parts.
Same year.
Explain that it was like the best of the best. But in my head, I just went, oh, it reminded me of Frankenhooker. So I just figured that's what Dan and Herbert was doing. I just made them to exist in the same universe. But I realize it's possible one influenced the other. But I did like all the puns that came from the different parts.
I made you.
Let's move forward into Beyond Re-Animators. Quite the delayed sequel, 13 years later, 2003. Shot entirely in Spain with the Fantastic Factory, which was where Brian Yuzna found his financing. And they had been producing several films down there, including Stuart Gordon's Dagon in 2001, which is a film I deeply love. What are people's thoughts on Beyond Re-Animator? It definitely goes in a different direction. It does not feel like a retread. It feels like it is really exploring something different.
I love the prison set.
I agree. It's a great setting for the story and some pretty elaborate sequences.
Very much. And I really bought the whole setting of it. And to me, that is something that any horror film really has to do. You've got to believe that setting. They've got to create a world that you accept. And then when the fantastic stuff starts happening, you still believe that world that it's within. And it really got to me that way. I thought this one really did a very good job with that.
I think people should see this one. This was my least favorite. I felt that it lacked some of the intentionality of the other movies in the franchise. I thought that there were some things that were production wise a little distracting, like the dubbing. I thought sometimes the tonal shifts were more confusing than fun. Like there's the scene when Speedball is reacting to the drug and it's like a full Danny Elfman style score all of a sudden. My least favorite when it came to the women characters in a Re-Animator movie. And I know that some of the BDSM stuff that Yuzna's done before worked in From Beyond in a different fun way that didn't give me like an unforgivable ick. But this movie, I had just the full-on ick without any redemption.
Yeah. Well, and Stuart Gordon directed From Beyond, whereas
that's what I meant.
Yuzna directing this one. And I think you're right that Yuzna just has kind of a different sensibility. Sarah, what are your thoughts?
I kind of agree with Anna. I liked how the women were represented in the other one. This one was just like, even to the point where you see a decapitated dick on the floor and the rat playing around with it. You're just like, cheap laugh. I thought the prison scene was interesting on the continuing to evolve Herbert West. We just accept his ridiculousness. So I enjoy that part. I like the goofiness. I like the deep levels of jokes, even if they're slapstick. So this one, it just seemed like, how would he get all of these experiments? Like when he was like experimenting in his cell and he stole the essence from the rat. I was just like, okay. So I thought maybe they were not in an American prison system, or he was really good at trading, because it just seemed weird how he got so much privilege, even with a evil warden.
It's been a long time since I've seen Beyond Re-Animator. I'll admit, probably 15 years or so. I have not really revisited it. I think I've seen it once and then in parts. I think that part of it, my response to it, is that Brian Yuzna, like, he obviously attached himself to different parts of the Re-Animator concept than Stuart Gordon did, and he doesn't have the same background, obviously. So in the second one, where the craziness, I think, makes it kind of fun and wild and different, in this one, it feels like misguided, and like he was now trying to, like, little threads that sew it, pardon the pun, sew it to the first two films. I think it was a good idea to set it way later. That I liked. Mm-hmm. But like stitching it with this character who was there the first time, the reagent that he had from forever ago, a lifetime ago, those are the things I really didn't connect with as much. I would have loved it as just a standalone, like, here's a guy who has this past, who's now been in prison for the reason, I guess, because Dan sold him out or whatever, and then just having its own story, even if it was still set in a prison. I think that could have been really cool, because you could have taken an angle of like, nobody cares what happens to these people, alive or dead, right? Like there's so much to have worked with, and then it just didn't go any of those places. It was just crazy, and so for me, I don't personally love this one, but you know, different strokes for different folks. I also kind of would have maybe loved to see like a Psycho 3, Re-Animator 3, like let Jeffrey Combs direct it, because he might understand the character better than anyone, right? He's lived it twice. His career's defined by it. That might have been cool to see.
Honestly, that's one of the things I like about this one, is this does feel so lived in. Like, I think Jeffrey Combs is a better actor, you know, almost 20 years on. And I think he really knows how to play those lines in a way. He knows how to play this character in a certain way. So I like his characterization here quite a bit. I like a more mature Herbert West. I think this one has enough interesting moments throughout. I don't know that it holds together as a movie, but there are moments that I'm like, I love that. I love that. I love that, that I'm able to kind of enjoy it. I like the fact that we come up with a completely different, you know, we've got the reagents still, but he comes up with this nanoplasmic energy that he's capturing, you know, basically the soul of people. And then, not to be content with just capturing the soul, we're going to put it into something else and see how that reacts. You know, that's a fun concept. First film is kind of based on the first two chapters of the Lovecraft story. And then the second one kind of follows the latter chapters of the Lovecraft story. And this goes beyond, it goes into a completely new story that Lovecraft had no part in. And I think there's a freedom to that. I also feel like it's a little off the rails in that regard. It's kind of like, it's just kind of going wherever it wants to go. What would be fun? What would be interesting? I don't dislike it for that. I feel like it's nowhere near the level of the original. As far as sequel go, I enjoyed it well enough.
It was made as part of a picture deal, right? I think that was part of it too. It's almost like, I'm going to make a bunch of movies and one of them has to make money.
Right. It feels like that was written into the contract, right? We'll also get a Re-Animator movie. Well, and I think our Spanish producer, because this was produced in Spain. I think our producer was like, I want to make a Re-Animator movie. If you're a horror fan, which these guys were, they're like, and we want to make a new Re-Animator movie. And I think everybody signed on, possibly with the best of intentions, also realizing that there might be some commercial possibilities.
In the third act, when it just got so dependent on the CGI effects, and here, let me admit, I'm revealing my age here. CGI just, gets under my skin. I don't really accept it the way I accept practical effects. And so that just kind of ruined it for me. And where in the first film, we ended all there in the morgue with that great stuff going on, and it's also focused there. This one is we're running all over the prison. People are swinging from chandeliers or whatever.
Half people
Rare.
are swinging.
Half people, right? Yes. That now I'm just kind of sitting back, going, "Oh yeah, come on."
Yeah, I don't think that's too old of an age. I think practical effects have an artistic quality about them that last longer than CGI, because CGI is always using the most popular computer of that time, and so it ages so quickly, and then you're just like, that looks like the iPhone 3 or something like that. So
you can't act with it.
yeah, whereas practical effects have an artistic quality than craftsmanship, and it ages well because you see the art, even if it is laughable, it's still beautiful.
Well, kind of going back to what I was saying in the first film, even if we know how the trick is done, we appreciate the effort that went into the trick.
And it's so weird with the crew that they had that they chose to do that too. It's like these are guys who cut their teeth with practical effects in a franchise known for its practical effects.
Yep.
And again, it's someone else mentioned the dubbing kind of takes it into another realm too. That we're almost watching a spaghetti western here or something. And
feels very disconnected from reality.
Mm-hmm. I do love Jeffrey Combs in this movie, though. He's still doing a great performance. He's still playing a character he knows the fans love, and I think he has. My favorite is actually the end of the movie where he just casually just grabs the ID, walks, and it gives a tough time. Like, what's your name? I want to know who's going to be responsible for the death of this patient.
Right.
Just wanders on off into the mist. And actually, I love that scene when he goes out into the mist at the end. I thought that was a great end. And I like that we're left on that cliffhanger for Herbert West.
I do want to talk briefly about the musical. As I mentioned during the introduction, it was definitely something that was a project near and dear to Stuart Gordon's heart. He was inspired by the success of Little Shop of Horrors when it became a musical. And the songs are actually really kind of great, and they all propel the story forward, which is one thing I love in any good musical, is that we don't just kind of stop the action to have a song. Like, these songs kind of move us forward in the beats. Chris, you said you saw this musical upward of 30 times. Where did you?
Yeah, so I love it. I followed, actually, Stuart Gordon did a lot of pop-up theater in Los Angeles, where I'm from. I went and saw his play that he did, Taste, which is he had these really interesting concepts. That's about the news story at the time of a German guy who hired who found somebody online to eat him together.
Right.
And he made a play of that. He's always been addicted to the stage. And when they dropped the Re-Animator musical was coming, not only did I have to see it, but then my close friend Jesse Merlin got cast in the role of Dr. Hill. So then he was able to help us get there a lot of times, in addition to, so it was part buying tickets, part, hey, we have some extra spots, you want to come by? And I just would go there constantly. The theater was 100-seat or so theater, but they added extra rows. There was a gore zone or a splash zone, which was the beginning. And dear God, did they utilize that? There was not actually a not splash zone. And watching Stuart Gordon revisit, the thing that launched his career pretty much in a different way, really made him a career filmmaker and stuff. He obviously he understood that, and it was a pretty faithful adaptation of his film,
right?
Of the movie, not of the book, obviously.
Yeah.
You're right. The songs were perfectly written. It haunts me to this day that they never did a cast recording because it was ridiculous. And then anytime there was gore on stage, the audience knew it, including one specific scene where Herbert West, who's played by this guy Graham Skipper, who would later go on to act with Barbara Crampton, which is kind of awesome full circle stuff.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm very excited about this.
No, I'd forgotten that Graham Skipper was in it, and I was like, oh shit, there he is.
Yeah, he's digging intestines out of a body, and it's wrapping all around him. It's the ending, and he just starts aiming it. It's a hose, so he just starts aiming it at the audience, just goring everybody up. All their shirts that they sold for the production were white, and you would come wearing white and then get it glorified or whatever. It was fantastic. It got extended multiple times. It went to New York. It went to London. It came back to Los Angeles. Mr. George Wendt started in the role as the dean, but he got quickly he moved on to other stuff, and they quickly replaced him. But I think the core of this, and what shows maybe why the first movie is so great, is that almost the entire cast stayed the whole time. Like once they were cast, they were on board for wherever this thing took them, and it was a half a decade long of performing this thing every single night during its runs. Just a phenomenal piece, and it was on a small set. Pretty much, you had a doctor's room set that would double as a classroom, and then sometimes they would have like a house interior. And other than that, very bare bones. It was all in the performances, which is what we loved about the first one, right? Just the camp element, make it musical. It goes together perfectly.
Even the staged reading video that I saw, almost all of those actors ended up doing the production. I think the only one who wasn't in that was William Atherton, played Carl Hill in the staged reading version. William Atherton, best known from like Ghostbusters and Die Hard, the guy you love to hate. Well, you love to hate him as Carl Hill in this production as well. But yeah, a lot of great energy to it. And as Chris said, it like had a really great response. And it was just really nice to see Stuart Gordon returning to his theater roots and showing that he still had the goods. One of my favorite things about the stage reading recording is that you can see Stuart Gordon in the background. He's kind of, the camera is showing Dr. Hill, and behind him is Stuart Gordon, who is making all of the Foley effects. Like he's the one like slamming doors and making, crumply noises. And it's like, this is a guy who's like, I love theater and I want to be on stage with my people.
It was such a small theater. I think that is it allowed him to do whatever he wanted. And then the Dr. Hill puppet thing that they made for Jesse to carry his own head around was really effective. You lost sight of the fact that there was like a dude in a essentially giant Frankenstein monster suit. Did not matter. And also the fact that they had such a diverse group of singers, like Jesse, my friend, he's an opera singer who sings in like a bass baritone. And so you had this like commanding bass evil, and then you had Graham and all these other characters. It was, I don't know how, it's sometimes serendipity happens, it was just a flawless amalgamation of random parts that I'm pretty sure most of the actors, it was their first major gig, not unlike the film. With a few exceptions of seasoned actors who maybe were in a different part of their career. Also, it was kind of there was already Evil Dead, the musical, I believe, but it predates this wave of everything the musical that has come out at this point. All of these horror films, Silence of the Lambs, the musical that came out a few years after it, like everything the musical, but this was before it and it outlasted any of them.
Well, on the note of everything is the musical, though, it sounds like there was an immersive part of it where you got to be a part of the musical, which I think takes it to another level. I have not seen it. I don't like musicals, but
you might see this one.
I would totally see this if I got to be a part of the Splash Zone. That sounds so fun.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And Ignite Films, I've referenced their new 4K release a couple of times. There's a little featurette on the making of Re-Animator, the musical, where they talk to the cast members, the composer of the book and lyrics. But I want to just kind of like highlight some of the other special features that are on that 4K release. There's a conversation with Jeffrey Combs, Barbara Crampton, and Brian Yuzna. There is an interview with Lee Percy, who is our editor. They talk about the legacy and the impact of Re-Animator. They have an interview with Stuart Gordon's wife, Carolyn Birdie Gordon, who plays the doctor that tells Dan to stop trying to resuscitate the patient at the beginning. There's a documentary that you can also find on YouTube, but it's about the Organic Theater in Chicago. And it's from 1977. So there's a whole lot of new features that are created, but there's been several releases of this on home video already. And all of those extras are ported over. There's 3 audio commentaries, most of which with Stuart Gordon and Brian Yuzna and the actors. There's a feature-length documentary called Re-Animator Resurrectus. There's just a ton of things. And any fan of Re-Animator is going to want to check out this new release from Ignite Films. It is just fantastic. Chris, I think you said you picked it up as well, yeah?
No, I have the soundtrack
Okay.
from Waxwork, but I'm looking at the features. It's insane. Like
It is insane.
Thanks for giving us all a copy, Dr. AC. It's interesting hearing so much of this release has Stuart Gordon's like personal voice on it, because we all know a lot of filmmakers, they don't want to talk about the start of their career, or they don't want to talk about the one thing that people always want to talk to them about. But he seems to have always loved talking about it. He did not care. He's like, it made me who I am.
Yep.
And he would talk to you happily. And also he was the jolliest, kindest man I've like ever met in my life. Yep. So to think that this sick shit came out of his head is wild.
Yeah, he was kind of a happy Santa Claus kind of guy.
Yes.
And he was older than some of the other kind of the masters of horror. You know, you think about Carpenter and Tobe Hooper and things like that. Like he was a good, 10 years older than most of them. And so, he was kind of leading the way, even though he came to the game late. He was bringing a bit more of experience, just life experience in general.
His work is unlike anyone else.
Absolutely. And yes, he did have quite the career, even though this is certainly his best known and best remembered. Checking out the filmography of Stuart Gordon will not be a bad thing for anybody. Circling back around, let's offer our final thoughts on Re-Animator and the Re-Animator legacy. Mike, let's kick things off with you.
I go back to what I said before. This film is so original. And when I went back to see it this time, it had probably been 10 years since I'd seen it, and had a good memory of the plot, everything else. But to watch it again, I just realized how much originality has been lost today. We see so many reboots, remakes, sequels, all that, just to tell a completely original story and to try to do it with that kind of spirit. It is telling the story in the right way that is important. Yes, the special effects mean a lot, but they're not all of it. Among horror fans, this film will always have an audience.
I know where there's that question that people always goes, what's your favorite horror franchise? I enjoyed Re-Animator. I thought it was a good movie. I was really happy that I was encouraged, thank you, AC, for having me watch The Bride and Beyond, and I'm excited to see the musical and potentially this organic theater documentary. So I would say this is a franchise that'll grow on you.
I think this is one of the key legacy pieces. It cannot be recreated. The first film especially is a true landmark into probably what got generations of people into being interested in the horror genre in general. Horror also pays the bills for the studios, and it's interesting to see people like in that Ebert review from before, him saying like, despite all this stuff, it's still good. It was always good, and I think if you can shed yourself of that, it will become phenomenal and life-changing fun. And I think that's the biggest thing. It is extremely fun from the top down. Coming from someone who understood the work and understood the medium of a movie, and just a bunch of people who are fully on board. I love it. It's clear everyone here loves it. I'm stoked to be able to talk about it. And the sequels, like them or don't, they do move into interesting directions. So as a franchise, it is also rewarding to step into once in a while and to think about a lot.
H.P. Lovecraft, famous and influential as he was, is a terrible racist. And this story is one of the most obvious examples. Like, he's writing a book where he's like, and the scariest thing of all came into the door, a black man. Like, he's terribly racist. But it's such a cool thing that we get to reclaim a piece of his IP, and it's made entirely its own. And it's made with a lot of fun and a lot of love and a lot of creativity that gets rid of all the bad stuff of that, takes one shred and makes an entirely new franchise from it. And it's the wonderful Re-Animator franchise. The original Re-Animator, I think it's kind of a perfect horror movie. It does so many things it was brave. It was a brave movie doing brave things that paid off, and I love it. And then Bride and Beyond are both worth seeing. They continue to do new things and expand this franchise and take it a step further from a terrible person, and I think everyone has to see Re-Animator. But if you're a cool kid, you should see Bride and Beyond as well.
You are a cool kid. You're all cool kids. I'm so glad you came out tonight and to talk about this movie. The word beloved came to mind, and I don't know if somebody said it, but it's this is a beloved film by horror fans. It connects with you, and you are in turn connected to it. And I'm so glad we got to have this conversation. Happy 40th anniversary, Re-Animator. And looking forward to having you all on again very soon. And until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.